Hello. Welcome back. This week in history, I am your host, Bradley Smith, and today we will be covering for the week of April 6th through April 12th. Let's get into it. Starting off, on April 6th, 1896, after a gap of 1,500 years since the ancient Greek Games were banned, the first modern Olympic Games officially opened in Athens, Greece. King George I of Greece declared the Games open for an audience of 60,000 spectators. Approximately 241 male athletes from 14 nations competed in 43 events, marking the beginning of the world's most famous international sporting tradition. And as an honorable mention for this day, in 46 BC, Julius Caesar defeated Calicus, Metellus Scipio, and Marcus Porcius Cato the Younger at the Battle of Thapsus. Now we move on to April 7th. On April 7th, 1948, following the end of World War II, the United Nations officially established the World Health Organization, or the WHO, not the band. Headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, the agency was created to coordinate international health efforts, fighting epidemics, and improve national health services. Today, this date is celebrated annually as World Health Day. And in 1933, Prohibition dies down and we celebrate National Beer Day. Now we move on to April 8th. On April 8th, 1974, in a moment that transcends sports, Hank Aaron of the Atlanta Braves hits his 715th career home run, breaking the long-standing record held by legendary Babe Ruth. Aaron achieved this feat in the fourth inning of the game against the Los Angeles Dodgers. He famously overcame immense racial hostility and death threats during his pursuit of the record, making the achievement a landmark moment in the American Civil Rights era. And in 2005, the funeral for Pope John Paul II happened, which is still the largest public funeral ever. Now we move on to April 9th. On April 9, 1865, in one of the most consequential moments in American history, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia to the Union General Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. While small skirmishes continued elsewhere, this effectively ended the American Civil War, beginning the long and difficult process of national reconstruction. And in 2003, Baghdad falls, which would ultimately end Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq. Now we move on to April 10th. On April 10th, 1912, the RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ocean liner of this time, departed from Southampton, England on its maiden voyage bound for New York City. While the departure was celebrated as a triumph of engineering, the journey famously ended in tragedy just 4 days later, when the ship struck an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic. And in 1815, Mount Tambora erupts in Indonesia, and 1816 would become the year without the summer. Now we move on to April 11th. On April 11th, 1814, following the invasion of France by the Sixth Coalition, led by Austria, Russia, and Prussia, Napoleon Bonaparte was forced to abdicate unconditionally as Emperor of the French through the Treaty of Fontainebleau. He was subsequently banished to the Mediterranean island of Elba, though he famously escaped and returned to power for the 100 Days the following year. This date marked the first definitive collapse of his European empire. In 1951, President Harry Truman fires General Douglas MacArthur during the height of the Korean War. And finally, April 12th. On April 12, 1861, the defining conflict of the United States began when Confederate forces opened fire on Fort Sumter, a Union-held fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. The bombardment lasted 34 hours and resulted in a Union surrender, but ignited a 4-year war that would eventually end slavery and reshape the American nation. And in 1945, FDR dies during the latter of the end of World War II, and President Harry Truman would then take over. That's all I got for this week. Next week, I will bring you more facts for that week. But until then, see you guys next time, and God bless America.